Tatiana. Welcome, everyone. I'm with Consulting Services for Education, and we provide consulting services for education. I'm going to report on the SIIA education market surveys, and that's plural. We are now in our second annual pre-K-12 survey. That report is finished and should be released probably the end of this week, beginning of next week. Free to all of those who participated. You get a copy and at a reduced rate to SIIA members. So the second annual survey covers the 2010-11 school year. We began with a universe of 581 companies who sell digital products and services into the institutional K-12 space. We had 105 companies participate, and they reported over $2 billion in digital products and services sold. That's a lot of money. And it's a big percentage of the market out there. When we extrapolated that out to the universe, we came up with 7.76 billion as the size of the market. That's an increase of 3.5% from the 2009-10 survey. That came in at 7.5 billion. So it's a modest growth, and to me what's really interesting are some of the details. We asked people to report in terms of content, what we call instructional support, and platforms and administrative tools. The largest segment this year with 38% is instructional support. Second was content with 36%. That's different from last year. Last year, content was number one. And what's interesting is content was down a couple of percent this year, whereas instructional support was up about 10%, and the platform's administrative tools was up about 16%. When we look at the categories within content, reading ELA is number one, math 2, and science 3. And again, what we found in technology this year, as in last, is that there's no surprises between reading, ELA, and math. It is different from regular supplemental surveys on the science issue. That's usually down closer to social studies. They're usually about the same in terms of general supplemental, and it's interesting to speculate why in technology digital survey science was that much higher. Big news this year was spending on testing and assessment. Huge news, and that was larger than reading ELA this year. So whether that's because there's just a print to digital transition that's particularly important to the testing assessment community, whether it's anticipation in several years of the Common Core assessments, we can guess all that, but what we do know is serious money there. Professional development is still pretty big. And finally, the administrative and IT categories, SIS class scheduling was number one. So if you step back a bit, you're sort of thinking, well, they're doing testing and assessment, and people are buying infrastructure to be able to report the data and perhaps even analyze it and think about it. We have started the first annual higher education survey. That includes community colleges and colleges and universities. For the 2010-11 school year, we picked a universe of 387 companies. And by the way, I think it's very interesting when we looked around to get data on how many companies were selling into pre-K-12 and selling into higher ed, that in and of itself is an interesting finding. And what we did is we went to the vendor lists at all the major conferences and created a master list of those companies and began to look at what their products and services were. So we're beginning to get a better idea of how many total companies there are. And what we felt, for example, with pre-K-12 is we're closer to the actual number. I think we're still missing some in higher ed. 39 participated. That is disappointing. In general, it's sort of tough to do any breakdown into categories with that. But what we decided to do was to write a report that collected a lot of information on the higher ed space, because that in and of itself is a major contribution. And we'll do what we can with the data this first year. We're hoping, and just to give you a little sense of how collecting data from companies, I had to get knee pads from the begging, when we started the pre-K-12, the first year we got 9 companies and did not do a survey that year, did not do a report. The second year we got 81, the third we got 105. So it's important that the industry participates so that you can get accurate data and a free copy of the report. Did I say you get a free copy of the report if you give your data in? Free? But those 39 did give us a total of $389 million in revenues, with instructional support the largest segment and content second. But again, I'm not confident in that data, but it is interesting as you looked across the companies, English and language arts at the college level was #1, and math was #2. So there's something interesting about that moving between the levels. So the 2012 surveys are now open, and you can participate. And there are little cards that we have that are red and green, and they have the URL to go to. It takes about 10 minutes. No more if you know your data. If you don't know your data, you have bigger problems than that. So if I were you, I would go to siia.net/education/market survey, and you have the opportunity there to participate in one or both, depending on who you are selling into. Thank you. And now Ken has a couple of words.